The NASCAR Cup Series regular season finale at Daytona delivers on drama. Ryan Blaney gets his third win of the season, and several fan favorite drivers come up just a little bit short. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove Daytona Race Review Edition. We're throwing it back to like early 2019. We're in my car. It's actually the same car from those 2019 and 2018 videos. I just got back from Daytona, drove all the way to St. Augustine to the house that I'm staying at, along with a bunch of other NASCAR content creators, some other sports YouTubers that have been joining us for this trip. And unfortunately, this house I'm staying at has 13 other people inside of it and has terrible acoustics. So that's why we're back in the car. I hope the audio quality is sufficient. We do in fact have a sponsor for this week's episode. This episode is sponsored by Aleve. More hours of pain relief in every dose, fewer pills, proven relief all day long, available at Walmart. That is Aleve, proud sponsors of all things Out of the Groove, this show, the Weekly Viewers Guide, the podcast network. Thank you to Aleve by Bayer for sponsoring this episode. So where to begin? I was at this race. I saw it in person. There will be a video coming out later this week documenting my entire race day experience. It was fantastic. It's 1:30 in the morning. There's no way I'm going to be able to go through and analyze every specific moment, every detail from this race, so I'll hit on the highlights. We're going to talk about this event more broadly because this is the second year in a row that Daytona has been the regular season finale, and I think personally for the second year in a row it delivered on drama. It put on a show. It was a spectacle. It was exciting. In my opinion, if NASCAR is going to have 3 super speedway races before the playoffs, I think it's genius to have one of them, probably Daytona, be the regular season finale. I think it's a great move. I know a lot of fans are upset that Daytona is not over July 4th weekend anymore. I understand that was a fan favorite tradition that has now evolved, has now changed, but I love having Daytona as the regular season finale because Daytona is a wild card. We all know it. It takes skill to win at Daytona, sure, but it also takes an ungodly amount of luck to come out of these races unscathed. And so as long as we have a playoff format that rewards winning above all else, consistency, good finishes do matter, but winning trumps everything. As long as we have this playoff format and as long as we're going to go to 3 super speedways before the playoffs, why not have a super speedway be the regular season finale? I was there tonight in person, and believe me, the atmosphere felt electric. When a guy made a daring 3-wide move up near the front, didn't matter if it was, fan favorite Chase Elliott or Chris Buescher late in the race, everyone was on their feet. Everyone was excited. Everyone was, pointing, excited. The mood, the vibe, I haven't been to Daytona in a few years, but let me tell you, this atmosphere was thrilling to be a part of. So I think this race delivered on drama. Knowing that pretty much any driver in the field had a shot at winning tonight and making the 16-car playoffs, really through the end of stage 2 even, nobody was really out of the race by that point, that was exciting to watch. And I think if you're going to have 3 super speedway races before the playoffs, if you're going to have a win-and-you're-in playoff format, Daytona as the regular season finale is the exact right way to go. I love it. Now, as for this race specifically, there were no, clear favorites tonight. Nobody dominated this race. This race had a ton of lead changes. At one point, I think before the second or third to last restart, there was a graphic they threw up on the big screen that said this race had 15 different leaders. That's right, 40 cars in the field, 15 different leaders before the final 2 restarts, where I'm sure we had a couple other leaders sprinkled in there as well. When nearly half the cars in the field led a lap at some point in this race, that tells you it was competitive. That tells you nobody clearly had an edge over anybody else. I thought Logano seemed to have a pretty good car, but when he maybe cut a tire down or something late in the race, obviously he was taken out of contention. We know Denny Hamlin's fast, but he got some damage early on when everyone jacked up, when LaJoy and a couple other cars jammed up out of turn 4, and that set off the first big wreck of the night with Almirola and Bowman, I believe, getting a little bit of damage. So typically when we come to a super speedway, we think of Hamlin, we think of Logano, we think of Blaney, who did go on to win the race, but none of those 3 drivers dominated tonight for whatever reason or another. Instead, we had drivers like Corey LaJoy for Spire making a move on the lead and actually leading a lap at one point in this race and was in contention on the final restart, restarting 3rd. In fact, if I recall, he pushed Ryan Blaney to the lead and to the eventual win. Corey LaJoy did that. You had Chris Buescher from Roush Fenway Racing competitive until the very end. I did see right before I turned on the camera, though, that he did get disqualified, so he did finish 2nd. Apparently he will not be credited with 2nd. Ross Chastain was really fast, a little edgy up near the front, but he was clearly fast, very aggressive, so he deserves credit. Chase Elliott led laps. Bubba Wallace was there pretty much throughout the evening. I could go on and on and on. Your favorite driver probably led a lap tonight. And that's another thing. I'll admit, I was perhaps a little too too anxious about NASCAR changing the rules package at the super speedways. They got rid of the wicker bills on the spoilers. They lowered the horsepower a tiny bit more, all in an attempt to decrease the severity, the aggressiveness of the runs guys would get on each other, and to lower the overall speeds of the pack. Still this year, even at Talladega earlier in the spring, they were hitting over 200 miles an hour consistently in a pack. Tonight, I didn't see the speeds in front of me, but from what I saw people saying, the average top speed was like in the low 190s, maybe 191, 192. That's exactly what NASCAR was trying to do, but when they announced those changes a few months ago, I was worried that it would affect the quality of racing. For years, drivers would complain that there was too big of a bubble of air at the front of the field. It was impossible to pass the leader. I was worried that bubble of air would make a dramatic return with this variant rules package. That was not the case tonight. As I said, tons of lead changes, tons of different leaders, tons of passing throughout the field. It was a roller coaster, a merry-go-round, back and forth, all around. Everyone was shuffling positions lap to lap. I wish I could go into more detail, but this whole race kind of bleeds together, or at least the first 140 laps bled together, because through those first about 140 laps, there weren't any major incidents. There was that one kind of spin, the issue with Almirola and Bowman, but they both continued, and at one point or another were up in the top 5. The racing was action-packed. They didn't train a whole lot. They didn't just ride the top too long. A couple times they got up there all in the single file line, but it never lasted more than about maybe 10 or 12 laps, and pretty quickly things were jostling once again for position. So the racing was action-packed throughout the first 2.5 stages, but there were not really any big wrecks. No notable instance. Guys got squirrely. Kyle Busch, I think coming to the end of stage 1 or stage 2, got pretty squirrely. Ross Chastain scraped the outside wall in turn 2, I think in stage 1. Got pretty squirrely, but nobody wrecked. Now, the final 20 laps devolved into a mayhem, of course. We had a couple big ones, I think we could say, including on the final lap, which caused this race to end under caution. And that is unfortunate, I will say. I thought the race was fantastic through those first 140 laps. This race did not need a big, crazy, chaotic crash to be memorable. I thought what we saw was fantastic. It reminds me of, I think, the spring Talladega race, if I'm not mistaken, from last year, which, if I remember, did not feature many wrecks or any big crashes to my knowledge, to my memory, but was fantastic and action-packed and competitive from start to finish. It reminded me kind of that until those final 20 laps when we saw a couple of big crashes. Chase Elliott and Matt DiBenedetto came together in turn 4. Elliott maybe made a late block. I think DiBenedetto was in danger of getting himself hooked by the third place car. So both DiBenedetto and Elliott moving too much, too quickly, too frequently, and it created an issue. That set off one big crash. At the very end on the last lap, it was Kurt Busch who hooked. Daniel Suarez even made his presence felt there at the final half a mile or so, but he got hooked into the outside wall, into other people, bunch of traffic. Race ended under caution, which was the right call. Ryan Blaney emerged relatively unscathed with the victory. Credit to Ryan Blaney. Let's go and throw up the top finishers real quick. But credit to Ryan Blaney, because coming into this season, really every season of his career, my only knock against Blaney is that he just doesn't win that many races. He'd win one race a year, and sometimes he'd kind of get a little lucky. The Roval in 2018, he's been a great super speedway racer, but sometimes to win on super speedways, as I said at the top of the show, you need to get a little lucky. This year, he got that win in Atlanta where he ran down Kyle Larson, beat him straight up. That was fantastic, very impressive. He got a win last week, a win that was kind of surprising. He didn't dominate by any means, but again, made the right move at the right time, got the win. And then today, we know he's fast at these super speedways. I think he's won enough of these races now that we can no longer consider them all flukes necessarily. I think he clearly has a knack for this style of racing, and Ford, Penske, usually puts fast cars underneath him at these tracks. So he earned it tonight. I thought he was a very deserving winner. We haven't mentioned it yet. You see him actually there in the top 10. He had an eventful second half of this race, but Tyler Reddick, who came into the race about 25, 28 points to the good for the final playoff spot, he makes it, finishes inside the top 10. He will be in the playoffs representing Richard Childress Racing. So I mentioned how this whole race was topsy-turvy. Guys were coming and going, new leader every lap. Felt like there were 4 or 5 lead changes per lap for a while there. But when it's all said and done, nothing really changed. Ryan Blaney won the race. He's already won this year, so just adds a few more playoff points. That's cool. Kyle Larson ran well enough to maintain his regular season points lead, so he is your regular season champion. And Tyler Reddick, who entered the night, the last guy in, managed to hold on to that spot, even though I'm sure guys like Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, Bubba Wallace down late in the race, Chris Buescher late in the race, Matt DiBenedetto late in the race, definitely gave him a scare, I'm sure, but he came through and even finished top 10 despite the whole splitter, it looked like, being destroyed. So many wild finishers in this top 10. Because of Chris Buescher's disqualification, Bubba Wallace ends up second. You got Ryan Newman, Ryan Preece in the top 5. Justin Haley, who made a great 3-wide move to win the Xfinity race earlier today, gets a top 10 as well. BJ McLeod in the top 10? What? That is a name I don't think I've ever typed into this graphic until now. Well done, BJ. Josh Bilicki with a top 10. That is the one fun thing about these Daytona races, is while they do sometimes turn into chaos and mayhem and madness, it allows for some fun, memorable, season-making finishes for some of these smaller teams. Good for Josh Bilicki getting a top 10, because the rest of his Rick Ware teammates, oh gosh, they add one to the blooper reel. Anyway, those are your top finishers. We'll look at the points later this week. Kyle Larson is the points leader now as the playoffs. Everything resets a little bit. He has the most playoff points by far. He also gets the 15 playoff points for winning the regular season championship, so he has a 27-point lead over everyone else before the playoffs even begin. That's what happens when you're dominant in the regular season like Larson has been. But we'll talk more about the playoffs later this week when I'm back in my Texas studio. For now, I want to put this thing on the Groovy gauge. I've already talked about it a little bit. This race delivered on drama. It was exciting. It was thrilling. I'm not always a fan of the randomness, if you will, that super speedway racing sort of is built off of, that anyone can win. Like, I both like that on one hand and also find that kind of frustrating on another. Like when we think of the most talented drivers in the Cup Series, we think of Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, and super speedway racing allows basically everybody else to catch up to them, kind of artificially. So sometimes the randomness of super speedway racing can be frustrating. I think all of us fans have experienced those frustrations at some point or another. But at the same time, they also lead to amazing stories, like what would have been if Matt DiBenedetto had managed to make that move on Chase Elliott, not get blocked into the fence and wreck the field. Like, imagine if he'd been able to make that happen. Or if Corey LaJoie, who had a run on the leader there with like 1 or 2 laps to go, imagine he takes that run and goes for it instead of falling in line. You just never know. Those stories could have been incredible. As it is today, we had some wrecks that took some fast contenders out of contention, but we also had a very deserving winner at the end of the night, Ryan Blaney. This race, the first 140 laps bleed together because it was just clean, action-packed, thrilling super speedway racing. Again, the rules package was not an issue. It was fantastic. And then there was the final 20 laps that were a little messy, a little sloppy, especially that last lap wreck took out some cars that just didn't need to happen. I'm not sure why Kurt Busch was pushing on Suarez where he was and why he was. It seemed like a rookie mistake that a veteran made in that instance. But still, Daytona sometimes is just good at Daytona. I'm still going to give this race a very positive score. I'm going to give this race, you know, I usually give kind of like round numbers like 80, 70, 50, 55. I'm gonna go a little weird with this one. I'm gonna give this one an 88%. On behalf of Dale Jr., on honor, I'll give this race an 88% on the Groovy gauge. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. What did you make of the regular season finale? Did you enjoy the new rules package? Were you happy about Blaney winning? Do you feel like he was a deserving winner? You disappointed that Chase Elliott or Ross Chastain or one of those other drivers that was up front a lot tonight? Are you disappointed that they couldn't get it done? Leave a comment down below. I look forward to reading them. I am exhausted, so I am going to get out of here, go edit this video. I've been on the road for about a week now. I feel like I haven't stopped sweating since I got to Florida. It is humid as all heck down here. I will be at Darlington this next weekend, so the traveling does not stop, but maybe a little less humidity out in South Carolina. I can only hope and pray. But thank you all for watching this video. That is gonna do it for this episode. I'm losing my voice as well. It's been one of those weeks, one of those nights for sure. I gotta go get some sleep after I edit this video, of course. I will see you all again later this week. Stay safe out there, y'all. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.